2 शब्द बोले.
मी खरं म्हटलं तर मराठीमध्ये बोलायला पाहिजे, पण हा विषय एवढं नाजूक आहे की शब्द निवडलं पाहिजे मला वाटतं, म्हणून मी इंग्रजीमध्ये बोलणार. पण सारांश असा आहे की मला वाटतं आणि असं दिसून येते, संशय निदान आहे की आता 20 वर्षापासून ठिकठिकाणी सरकार हिंसाच्या विरुद्ध चांगलं योग्य कारवाई करीत नाही. आणि ते त्यांचे हेतू असेल की नाही माहीत नाही, पण वारंवार आपल्याला दिसून येतं. असं 2002मध्ये आपण बघितलं, गुजरातमध्ये काहीतरी घटना घडली, बरोबर, ते खूपच खेदाची घटना आहे. परंतु जो हिंसा त्याच्यानंतर चालू झालं एवढं वेळासाठी आणि सरकारने योग्य ते कारवाई केलं नाही, ते मला वाटतं खेदाची पण आहे. त्याच्यानंतर ओरिसामध्ये पण आपल्याला तसं दिसून येते आणि वेगवेगळ्या ठिकाणी असं आपल्याला दिसतात. पण आता मणिपूरमध्ये परत हे उद्भवलं, म्हणून खरं म्हटलं तर आपण दक्ष घेतलं पाहिजे. I'd like to speak in English because it's a very sensitive topic. I do feel that different governments in the last 20 years have not been taking the effective type of measures to bring about a stop in violence when it occurs. Sometimes violence does occur because of some incident that takes place for some reason, and the state is able to take effective measures to stop that. But it looks like different governments in different parts of the country have deliberately, this is of course something that we we feel this is what is happening, but different parts of the country we have governments not taking effective action to stop violence, and violence continuing at a very, very general and widespread manner. And I think maybe if I mention Gujarat, it would be appropriate, because in 2002 a very sad incident took place at Godhra. But for what the government did not do and did do, because the government allowed the bodies of those who were unfortunately burnt to be taken in procession right through Gujarat. And in other words, that was an instigation for violence. And when violence occurred, effective measures were not taken for several days. And we know the amount of damage that took place. More than 1,000 people were killed, and mainly of the Muslim community. We have something similar that happened in Kandhamal, also in Orissa. Again, a very sad incident of a religious leader being murdered. But for the violence that took place against, in such a widespread manner against a Christian community, because there was just an allegation that it was a Christian who did that deed. Now, this is something that could have been controlled by the government of the time, but the government did not take effective action for days, and it was widespread violence against a particular community. I do think this is happening at the moment in Manipur. It has happened for 3 or 4 days when perhaps there was some protests by the Kuki and the Naga tribes. And they had a reason to protest, which I will explain in a moment. Suppose there was widespread unrest in the Kuki and Naga areas, and they, in one place perhaps they might have taken to violence. We really don't know, because as all of us know, the internet was shut down. So what is the spark that started this conflagration? We really don't know. However, the fact that something might have sparked off a response does not mean that the whole Christian community in that area is targeted. And more than about 50 churches, we are told, have been burnt. Many homes of Christians have been destroyed. More than 100 people have been killed. And there's widespread destruction, widespread fear. My brother just now spoke about a place in which Christians have taken shelter, and they are crammed in one room with not even an inch to move. Now, this is the situation of the government not taking sufficient action when violence erupts, for whatever reason. In fact, there is a great feeling that the government wanted it to happen. It did seem to be state-sponsored violence, because it was not curbed for a long time, and churches are very easy to protect. They are easily identifiable. That the administration did not take the action that was required, that it shows a possibility of complicity of the administration in this act and in this series of acts. And that is why I think all of us, whether we are Christians or Hindus or Muslims or whatever religion or ethnic group we come, we should all stand up against this, and we should say that governments should do their job, which they don't seem to be doing, again, for reasons we don't know. It does seem to be ulterior motives. Now, my friends, I am speaking here as a Christian priest because some of my own colleagues were affected. You know that I belong to a Christian organization called the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. And we have all types of services being rendered in education, in health, social welfare, all over the country and all over the world. So in the Northeast, we have a number of schools, churches, we have a college, we have different types of services of humanity for all people of all religions. Now, even my colleagues, easily identified in their cassocks, they were attacked. Their jeep was burnt. Some of them were hurt. Luckily, they were minor hurts, but they had to run for their lives, which does mean that the type of violence that erupted there was very widespread, and it was targeted at Christians. I'm also speaking as a social scientist. I have a PhD in sociology, and my thesis was precisely on the culture of indigenous people, the tribals. So I think it is very clear that the reason why this unrest, peaceful unrest that started, was against the move to bring the Métis under the tribal nomenclature, to bring them under the STs, the scheduled tribes. Now we know that the scheduled tribes are listed in the Constitution, and that has been done after a lot of research on the type of culture that they have. Internationally, the International Convention on Indigenous People gives criteria. One is that you can show that they were the earliest settlers in the region. The other is that you can show that their culture is very different from the mainline culture. And the third would be backwardness. Now, under all three, the Métis do not qualify to be STs. They are the majority dominant community. They are not backward. They cannot show that they were in the earliest settlers of that region, and their culture is also mainline culture. It's not tribal culture. So isn't it right for the tribals of that area to protest when these type of proposals come up? And that is what the Kukis and the Nagas did. Please remember that the Kukis and the Nagas were freedom fighters for India against the British. They are the ones who made it clear to the British that they could not control India. because they mutinied so often, and there were periods of time in which a whole area in the northeast was free from British rule because of the opposition of the Nagas and the Kukis and the other indigenous people there. So there are freedom fighters. So for them to be treated, whether they are Christians or Muslims or Hindus or not, for them to be treated in the way they are being treated now, targeted violence against them, that is, I think, a loss for the whole country. Because no country can survive, leave alone prosper, can survive if violence is perpetrated against a large group. And the tribals are a large group there. They are not the majority. They may be 30 or 40%. But it's a large group who are being targeted. And so, my friends, I think all of us should stand up for justice. This is a justice issue. This is an issue that the government of the day cannot say, okay, I'll make you the tribal group, or I'll make you a scheduled caste. No, you can't do that. There are criteria to declare groups as tribal or scheduled caste, and that process has to go through. Only then can you have this proposal put up, which has not happened yet. And therefore it is really a political move which the tribals have every right to peacefully protest against. And that is what I think they did. I'd like to repeat, if it had gone into a violent incident, those people who perpetrated the violence should be brought to book, but not the whole community, the whole ethnic group targeted. This can only be done through complicity of the government. And that is what we are sad about, and we protest. So let us all stand up for the dignity of every individual, and stand up for the Constitution of India, which gives a place for every group in our country, and especially for minority groups. And for the STs and the SCs are a specially chosen group because of the long history of oppression that they have suffered. So they should not be targeted in this manner. That is my submission, and I do hope all of us all over India will support the tribals of Manipur. Thank you.
Questions will be after the speakers have made it. We will keep